the Bridgeport Board of Education. Today is September 19th. Yes. And the time is 6:04 p.m. My name is Jennifer Perez. I'm a committee member. Also in attendance is Mr. Rob Traver, who's a committee member, and Joseph Halovic, who is not a committee member, board member, as well as Mr. Benahan on Zoom Teams, and Dr. Levy David is here.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from April 26, 2023.
We can't approve those. You weren't, I was, you weren't.
I'm not. I'm not going to abstain.
You'll abstain, so I can make a motion to
Yes.
approve and you'll abstain and that won't be sufficient votes to approve it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, suggestion, you can make a motion, she could second, but she just, would just have to abstain because she wasn't here, you would vote yes, she would abstain if you don't find any, errors on.
And is my vote sufficient or do you need a majority of the committee?
One would be a majority, one.
All right, I move to approve the minutes.
And I'll second. Any discussion? So there is an amendment needed on this one.
Sure.
On page 1, where it says Mr. Traver moved to approve the minutes of the meeting on February 23rd, and the motion was seconded by Ms. Traver. It was actually seconded by Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Okay.
So motion to amend.
You can make a motion, you make the motion to amend, you can second.
I can second it.
Okay, so I'm motioning to amend the meeting minutes from April 23rd, 26th, 2023.
I can second it.
Okay, all in favor? So I can't.
No, I oppose,
Opposed. And abstentions?
abstain.
Okay. So now the original motion is on the table. Motion to approve.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Myself. And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of high school graduation rates from 2022, 2023. Dr. Levy David, do you know who's presenting?
You're muted, Mayor.
Dr. Melissa Jenkins is supposed to be presenting.
She's not in the room or on Zoom. Teams. She's on her way in. We'll just hold for a minute.
That's-
How are you today? Can I sit at this table? Yes. Once you're ready, we're ready. Yes, ma'am. You know, I left my computer at work. I did that. I look at my iPad for the.
Yeah, I needed to sign on to the computer. I received questions that weren't in the original packet that I can only answer by signing on to a database.
Rita's asking how she can help you.
I need a computer. I don't know, I guess just trying to rush here. I could borrow your computer.
We recess for a second.
Okay, so motion.
We need to move to recess, or can we?
Quick motion.
I move to recess for 10 minutes.
We're gonna move to a quick 10-minute recess. I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Are we muted?
No,
John, are
we're-
we muted?
we're not muted.
It's for, they need to mute,
Okay, we are reconvening now from a recess. Joining the meeting via Teams is, how's that? Joining the meeting via Teams is Committee Chair Ms. Becky Perez. And we also have Dr. Jenkins here who will be presenting on the discussion of high school graduation rates for 2022 and 2023.
Good evening. Today's presentation will address the high school graduation rates. Unfortunately, the state has not published graduation rates for the year 2022, 23. But I will communicate about the graduation rates for prior years as well. And I will address the answers to the sub-questions presented for presentation. Additionally, I will discuss the item regarding potential later high school start time as well. So high school graduation rates would be addressed for school year 2018 to 2020, 2022, basically. So this slide presents the high school graduation rates by school. So aerospace is, each color is represented in the years. So the dark blue represents school year 2018-19, which was the first year before the pandemic. The orange represents 2019-2020, which was the year we went into the pandemic. 2020-2021 is represented in green. That's also a pandemic school year. And 2021-22 is, pandemic year as well. Last year was really our first year outside of the pandemic, and that data is scheduled to be released probably within the next month. So the average graduation rate at aerospace pre-pandemic was 91.6, and this is the 4-year graduation rate. Then during the pandemic, it dropped a bit to 89.1. At aerospace, it rebounded a bit to 91.8 in 2020, 2021. And then 21-22, it dipped again to 82.2, the 4-year graduation rate. At Bassett High School, the 4-year graduation rate for pre-pandemic was 67%. 2019-2020, 63. 2020-21, 67.2. And 21-22, 63.8. For biotechnology, pre-pandemic, 94.2. 2019-2020, 94.5. 2020-21, 93.4. And it dipped in 21-22 to 87.4. Bridgeport Military Academy, 95.7% in 2018.
I'm sorry, can you just keep that pointer above those bars? Because I'm having trouble following the pointer.
Okay.
It's so, that's great. That's
Yes,
much better.
perfect.
Thank you.
I'll move it over here.
No, above the bars was good, because then I can
Right
see.
above.
where you were.
Okay, gotcha.
But when it was in the colors, I was having trouble seeing.
Yes, sir. Bridgeport Military Academy in 2019-2020 is 98.4. In 2020-21 is 95.8. In 21-22, 96.2. Central High School, pre-pandemic, 2018-2019 is 77%. 2019-2020, 77.4. 2020-2021, 76.9. And then 21-22, 76.4. Information technology, 2018-19, pre-pandemic, 96.3. 2019-2020, 91.1 at information technology. 2020-21, 92.8. And then 21-22, 93.1. And continued four-year graduation rate at Warren Harding High School. In 2018-2019, 69.9%. In 2019-2020, 65.8%. In 2020-21, 69%. In 2021-22, 68.4%. So that's the four-year graduation rate. Would you like me to present the 6-year or begin to answer some of the questions listed on the agenda?
I have no questions.
You have questions ready?
I have answers. I guess one of the questions was the percentage of students that graduated on time in 4 years. So I presented that information. The next question, percentage of students that graduated early. I would need to follow up to do deeper research. That information was not available publicly. So, but I can proceed to answer the percentage of students that graduated a year late. So within a 4-year cohort, the percentage of students that graduate a year late, let me go to 5th year.
Can we make that data any bigger?
I'm going to try right.
I know it's done, not just nice. That's a little better.
Thank you. This is a 5-year graduation rate. The cohort for 5-year graduation is 1,462. The actual graduate count was 1,135. The number of children that were enrolled the previous year was 57. The certificate count represents the number of children that graduated who were in special education. That information is missing. The number of children that rolled over from year 4 did not graduate is 270. So 57 children who were in the original cohort 4 for a 4-year graduation rate rolled over to be 57, and those children graduated. We cannot account for 270. Either they left the district, they enrolled in night school, or they didn't graduate. And so that's the 1 year for all students. It is also broken down by male, female, English language learners, high needs as well. So you had asked for the percentage of students that graduated but took longer than 5 years. So let me go back to percentage. So the graduating percentage is 77.6%. The 57 students represent 3.9%. So 3.9% of the students that graduated and took a year later. So we retained 57 children and 3.9% graduated year 5 school. I can get you 6. Six-year graduation rate. Percentage of students that graduated under 5 years.
Okay.
The percentage of students that took longer than 5 years to graduate would be in the 6-year graduation rate. The 6-year graduation count.
That's a question.
Yes, sir.
5-year. So there were you said 207 students that we couldn't account for?
Correct.
And are those broken down? You said they were broken down by male, female?
Right, we could look at that if you like.
Like to.
So I'm just gonna finish up this 6.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, that's fine. That's fine.
So this graduation 6-year, the cohort count was 1,443. The graduate count for the district for 6 years was 1,155. There were 32 students that are part of the 6-year count. That meant that there were 32 students that probably could have graduated 4 years. We maintained 32 students across the 5th year and the 6th year. That represented 2.2%. The other count represents 256 children that if we had maintained them would have been, but did not graduate with us. They either went to night school, they did not continue high school. And that other percent is 17.7%. And that represents all students. Of the other counts that were male, there were 159 that were male. And that 159 represents 20.4%. A female, the other count represented 97 males, which was 14.4%, meaning we didn't graduate them. English language learners, the other count of that number that we did not graduate originally, 49 were English language learners, which represents 21.6%. High needs. High needs means free or reduced lunch, a student receiving special education services, or a student receiving English ESL services. So that number, the other count was 254. So the majority of children who probably are not graduating with their cohort, either 4, 5, or 6 years, are students that would fall in the high needs population. And that was 17.9%. Students eligible for free or reduced lunch, that's a subset of the high needs. The other count is 235, which represents 17.9%. Reduced lunch, the other count is 15. So only 15 children were eligible for reduced lunch, which represents 20%. and this is the 6-year graduation rate. The students receiving special education services, there were 31 students that were enrolled and graduated. The other count was 54. That percentage is 21.2%. Of this population, there were 92 students who were Black. That percentage is 15.9%. Of that population of students that did not graduate, the other count is 129 Hispanic students, representing 20.4%. The other count of the total count, 30 white students did not graduate in the 6-year graduation rate. The percent is 16.5. Foster care, the other count, meaning they did not graduate, 8 students, and the percentage is 36.4. And the other count for homelessness is 1, and this is across all our high schools. So the original other count was 256 students that did not graduate with their 6-year graduation cohort, did not take 6 years to graduate. And that percentage was originally 17%. So that answers the percentage of students that graduated but took longer than 5 years. I was asked to speak about the percentage of adult education students that completed the program. This lower box gives us information about the number of students during the 22-23 school year. So this is current 22-23 for Bridgeport Adult Education Program. 28 students received a credit diploma. 8 students received a Connecticut GED. And there's a national external diploma, which I can explain. I know Lynn, the interim director, had come to actually assist number 7. So we had a complete total of about 45 students that graduated from adult ed, either with a credit diploma, Connecticut GED, or a national external diploma. Did you want more information about each one of those categories and how someone would earn a national external diploma?
Yes.
Do you mind, Lynn?
No, absolutely not. And just to clarify, I did receive information indicating that we had a higher level of GED grads than is indicated on the information that was shared with you. So we actually had 58 GED grads for a total of 93 grads last year. And just to backtrack a little bit, the information that is shared with you is from our state system called LACES. And this tracks all adult ed grads across Connecticut, and it's broken down by program. While we had 1,000 students enrolled in the program last year, only about 300 of them were at a level that they were close to attaining a diploma based on their skill of entrance. So the breakdown is that 16.2% of the students in the adult credit diploma program attained a diploma. 41.2% in the national external diploma program received a diploma, and 67% of the students in the GED program attained a diploma. And those, again, are students that were at a level that they had the potential to attain a diploma. The National External Diploma Program, which was questioned, is where individuals complete a series of competencies and self-directed. They work with a mentor to achieve these competencies and demonstrate their skills in order to attain a high school diploma. And we actually collaborate with the Bridgeport Public Library and Mercy Learning Center for the National External Diploma Program.
Thank you.
Yes.
How does that different to the Connecticut GED?
So the GED is a state exam made up of 5 subject areas. Students prepare to take the national exam and they work within Bridgeport Adult Education to complete practice tests and lessons to prepare to take the state exam. So instead of demonstrating competencies that in a self-directed manner, you're taking a state exam at one time. It's actually a very difficult exam. It's very challenging for students to pass the exam.
And the national is just.
And the National External Diploma Program is a set of competencies, essentially. I think it's 46 competencies that students would demonstrate over a series of time. Because it's self-directed, it's really self-paced as well. It could take anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half to complete. It actually originated out of when veterans were returning from the war after Vietnam. That's where it was originated, to provide an opportunity for them to earn diplomas at that time. You're welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
So this is going to be a very late question, but can I go to college or apply to junior college with a national external diploma or a credit diploma?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most students in adult education we see attend a community college to start. The very basic reason is that they don't have the credentials, the classes to attend a 4-year institution. So, for example, the 3 years of a language, Algebra 2, oftentimes that's another requirement as well for college. So without those requirements, they'll start off at a community college and then they can transfer to a 4-year institution.
Then my next question is, for the total diplomas awarded, how many students were actually Bridgeport residents? Because we learned that the adult education program takes students from out of district. So I was just curious how many are actually in district Bridgeport residents.
So the only cooperating district that we have is Fairfield. I don't know if I have that number on the profile report. I can certainly get it for you. Typically, there is only a small amount of referrals from Fairfield, but I can definitely get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any further questions at this time?
Okay.
No, actually, Ms. Patterson, that's the ones I was going to ask.
Mr. Bennigan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins, please apologize when you say it. I don't see it either. About the special need report, how many kids that really the special need graduate, and then what is the maximum or the minimum points, grades the special need student have to graduate? Because I heard that sometimes they give it 20, 25, points to graduate. That's legal? They can do that or not?
The students graduating with 25 credits, they're graduating with the minimum threshold, and that is acceptable for students. If a student does not graduate with the minimum credits, some families decide for the child to get a certificate, because the certificate would allow the child to continue to get services through like a transitional education program. So depending on the child's needs and the family's choice, the families may choose certificates. Most of our families do not choose that for their students for their child based on data.
And do you present that tonight, or that's something different? You can show me, how many kids graduate from Bridgeport School Unit special need.
I'm going to go back to the arch right now.
No, if you really, if you don't show me tonight, I don't want the meeting get long. You can send me, to the board later. I'm okay with that. I don't want the meeting get long.
It'll only take 1 moment to go back. For a year. In 2021-22, the cohort count for students receiving special education services was 303. We graduated 173 students receiving special education services.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. We appreciate it. No more questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Sokolovic?
Yes, I just have a question. How hard is it, would it be to disambiguate data even further to show, because I see there's a great disparity between aerospace and then you drop down, you see, it's obvious to see the cliff between aerospace and basic, to disambiguate the data to show the high needs population of each school next to each other, because I'm sure it would be an inverse.
Correct.
It would be an inverse thing, because I think it bears pointing out that the magnet school kids aren't necessarily smarter than general school kids, but some of the general education students have higher needs, which is reflected in the graduation rates.
I'm sorry that I keep.
No, it's
By high school, the data is available. So Bassick High School, students, their cohort count was 236 in 21-22. Their graduate count was 150. And so they go down to their special education. This is just Bassick. They had a cohort of 66 students receiving special education services from this 150.
Some percent. Two different numbers.
Special education, the graduate count is 35%. So they graduated 53% of their students receiving special education services. 66 was the original at Bassick. They graduated 53% in 21-22. So, and I apologize that I have to keep going out because.
No, it's no worries. I just want to, because I think this would be fruitful to explore a greater detail that doesn't really have to necessarily be thinking far as
But just to
present services and just to explain the cliff is not.
Just to go to aerospace as an example.
I actually, if you stay at Bassick for 1 second, Dr. Jenkins, please, you defined high need initially in your presentation as poverty sped and ESL.
Yes, it's all the students
Right.
together.
And in this, in what you just said a moment ago was sped.
Just sped.
Right. So you didn't go to the other two.
No.
Okay.
That's why I said that's why I was mentioning it definitely bears a deeper look, and I think we're ready for it.
Just want to be clear.
But
If you want the deeper look by high school, it's something that can be done. Do you want me to compare it to aerospace? Or do you want me to go back to Bassick and look at each subset?
You have the floor, sir.
Right.
I
Yeah.
apologize, I interrupted.
no worries. I just wanted a broad idea. Wanted to point it, just basically to point it out, because I know we don't have a lot of data. And we're gonna, like Mr. Traber pointed out, you just pointed out one part of the cohort, because this wasn't expected to be on the agenda. It definitely bears a deeper look as far as equitable services and equitable things. I'd like to compare at a later date.
I think, yeah, I was gonna say, when you get the data for this past year, it would be nice if we can take that deeper dive. Mr. Sakalovic is suggesting,
Would you like the deeper dive by school?
I think the point that I hear Mr. Scully, which I would be curious about, is to compare a general ed school versus a magnet school. He picked out those two. I'm not wedded to those two per se, but I think the concept is fair to look at, whether we combine all our general ed schools to all of our magnet schools. That would probably be the most accurate comparison.
Okay.
Thanks.
You had asked about the valedictorian and salutatorian data. That information I am pulling up right now. Wanted to know their gender and racial and ethnic background. This information we did have for 22-23. At aerospace, the salutatorian was a white male.
There we go.
And the valedictorian was a white male. At Bassett, the salutatorian was a Black female, valedictorian Black female. At Biotech, the salutatorian was a female, white female, and the valedictorian was an Asian female. At BMA, the salutatorian was a Hispanic female, and the valedictorian was an Asian female. At Central, salutatorian was a Hispanic female, and the valedictorian was an Asian male. At Harding, the salutatorian was a Black female, and the valedictorian Hispanic male. At IoT, the salutatorian was an Asian male, and the valedictorian Asian female.
Your question? Ms. Betsy Cabrera?
I asked for this item because I realized the first year at graduation, there was no Black male valedictorian or salutatorian or top of their class. And then this year I was only able to attend one graduation, but it seems like there's representation from most, with the exception that this year I don't see a white female, that there are no Black males of color succeeding at the top of their class. Unfortunately, at the first half I was driving, so I really didn't pay too much attention to the data, but there seems to be an issue for males of color that's not being addressed. And I know there was a committee for it, but it's becoming apparent more so as to what we can do as a school district to support our males of color, especially African American, those who identify as Black, because they're not graduating at the top of the class. So I wanted to see what the rates were looking like broken down by various different needs that's shown on the EdSci website. And also thank you, Dr. Jenkins, because it's good for the public to know that it is publicly available information.
Yes.
And your Googling skills are now available for everyone at home. But as a board, at least in my opinion, there's a group that's being ignored that I would like to see, at least in the next 2 years. You know, what are we doing to support Black males, and I would like to see one at the top, And so this will be 2 years where I haven't seen one as valedictorian or salutatorian.
See that blown up again, please?
When I blow it up too much, it's small. That's the best I can do and keep it all on one page. Can do this.
Got it.
Thank you. It's okay.
There.
Yeah.
That's good. I can. Youngsters teach us all kinds of tricks.
Any questions? Committee members? Any questions? Mr. Chairman? Matthew Suarez?
This was before my time on the board. But what was left of the white paper report for the Males of Color Committee that was created? Because it should have shown, should have been white paper and research driven to promote the success of African American males in the district.
I have a copy of it if you would like me to provide that to
Yeah,
Dr. Lady David.
yes, please. Thank you.
I just want to proceed at this time to the second question. Second question was about a later high school start time. I will share part of the research in the previous BOE discussion. Research on school start times for adolescents. According to the 2014 School Health Policies Practice Study, 93% of high schools and 83% of middle schools in the U.S. started before 8:30 p.m. According to an earlier CDC study that analyzed the U.S. Department of Education data from 2011 to 2012 school year, 42 states reported that most public middle and high schools started before 8:30 a.m. The percentage of schools starting at 8:30 a.m. or later varied greatly by state. So no schools in Hawaii, Mississippi, Wyoming started after 8:30. And most schools in North Dakota and Alaska started after 8:30. Now Alaska, I think, maybe to the fact that they have more darkness. I don't know. So insufficient sleep and school start times. The American Academy of Pediatrics recognizes that many of our high school students get insufficient sleep, and they see it as a public health issue. They see that it affects the health and safety and well-being, academic success of our nation's middle and high school students. There are a number of factors, including biological changes in sleep associated with puberty, like the circadian clock, that internal clock for children will change. Their lifestyles change when they're older. They start to work, hanging out with their friends, they're engaging in athletics. And then the academic demands, perhaps staying up late after participating in extracurricular, can affect their sleep. And that there's evidence that strongly implicates earlier school start times as a key modifiable contributor to insufficient sleep for students. And I had mentioned the circadian rhythms. One of the studies, larger scale studies done on this in a high school occurred in Rhode Island in 2010. And the students in the study slept significantly longer and better with a later high school start time. They also experience significant benefits to their health and well-being. Later school, more sleep. A 30-minute later school start time led to kids having 45 more minutes of sleep. 39% of more students getting 8 hours of sleep. Students getting less time if they had less, 27% of students getting less than 7 hours of sleep. You see the difference in their sleep time. So if you went to bed at 8 o'clock, school started at 8 o'clock, only 16% of the students got 8 hours of sleep, versus 55% of the students getting 8 hours of sleep. And with school starting at 8 o'clock, 39% of the students in that Rhode Island study got less than 7 hours of sleep versus 7% starting at 8:30. So later the school time, the more likely they're going to get more sleep. So the effects of later school starts, a 30-minute later school start leads to kids being more awake, energetic, and they stay happy. Tips for healthier students: we want them to sleep 8 to 10 hours and during the week, not just the weekends. We want them to put their smartphones away. I think people will have to take them. And keep bedtimes consistent. It will lead to less sleepiness. And I will say my own niece said to me that when her bedtime is consistent, she's a junior in high school. She does better in school. And she says you can get on a vicious cycle. So as an example, she told me she will come home from school, she'll eat, she'll watch her Korean movies for many, many hours. And then she'll do her homework. So she'll not go to bed, her homework done, but then she'll go to bed at 2 o'clock and have to get up at 5. So she gets 3 hours of sleep. So she goes to school, she makes it. She has advanced classes, but it's this vicious cycle. She takes a nap, she gets up and watches Korean movies. She does her. So she told me this year she was going to interrupt this cycle. I have to call her and check on her. But when I didn't ask her about her sleep. I asked her about her goals for the year. And that's how the conversation emerged. And like I said, she's a good student, but I didn't even know that her lifestyle, her patterns, and how it interrupted her sleep. And so she does do better when she's running track. But when she's not running track, she has this Korean movie habit. So the expert opinions are the American Academy of Pediatrics. They believe in a later school start time. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine believe we should implement start times of 8:30 or later for middle school and high school students to make sure they're healthy and alert. And the American Medical Association believes that as well. In March 15, 2022, here at Central, I did go back into the minutes. We discussed, I believe it was Mr. Testani at the time. He stated that it would be quite a journey to make changes in this area. I guess he provided information from another district. The district was not named in the minutes. And it took about a year to implement the change in this community, and that the district drew on data from a neighboring district. So there must be a few districts in Connecticut engaging in this process. Mr. Testani noted that the transportation vendor challenges may have to be considered. He added that options in the district were presented for alternative times, that he said there was a conversation, and that we would need to have focus groups, including teachers, administrators, board members, parents, and community members as well. In talking to people about it, these were some of the possible implications of an earlier start time for Bridgeport alone. If we implement an earlier start time, the school districts we compete against in athletics, unless they start an earlier start time, it's going to be challenging for our children to compete. Flipping the transportation, if high school is an earlier start time, we would possibly have to flip the elementary schools due to transportation. They would have to start earlier, high school would have to start late. Parents sometimes rely on children after school. They get out early to be the childcare, to swing by the elementary school to pick up the younger sibling. That could be an implication. Our students work. They may not be able to get to their jobs, as early as they had in the past. So work could be an implication, and negotiating with our bargaining unions, and not just one, many, because if we flip the time, then it would have to be negotiated as well. These were some of the things that came up when I asked people across the district about it in preparation for them.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes. Your report suggested it was middle school and high school that we were talking about with regard to the time. And most of our middle schools are starting at 8:30 or later, correct?
We have 2 middle school sites that start early. We have Curiel and Reed, and they start early due to transportation.
Early.
I believe they start at 8 o'clock, and the rest of the middle schools start at 8:30, 8:35 with the elementary schools. So Curiel and Reed start, they're the only 2 that are early, on like a high school time, and that's due to transportation.
Ms. Baptiste Perez, any question?
Mr. Draper, I couldn't find a study that was just high school. In many communities, middle and high are linked together.
I understand why. I was noting recently that they seem to be later starting than they used to be. So
Yes, because Blackham used to be similar to Curiel and Reed.
Right.
There were several middle schools that started early to create a sense of community. The principals wanted the school community to start together.
Mr. Sokolic?
Yes. This was back when I was on the committee. I just want to give a brief background of how we came about this, the studies and all this. It was initially definitely a hard lift, but when we spoke about it, the superintendent was on board. We got a new superintendent. We don't know her feelings just yet about this, and the committee was on board, and I think it got to the full board for further exploration, but then there was guardrails put. There's like guardrail. We were talking about putting guardrails in place so we don't invest so much time and energy into it if it's not going to go anywhere. But I don't really remember what those guardrails were. I know we're supposed to get the community input from certain demographics. Like the work might be an easy one to go for first because we got the working papers over. So we still the superintendent. We can see what students are working and maybe have a focus group with them to see what time. And I'm not sure I really understand the unions too much because as far as I know, there's no start times and end times in the contracts, if I'm not mistaken.
so.
I think the school day could be relatively easily shifted, but of course, with a conversation with the union, of course.
But you're certainly in negotiations right now, so if you were going to explore it, that would be the time to explore it.
Right. Definitely. And the work, the childcare definitely is a concern that we would have to see how much, but then we got to look at thresholds. If it's going to affect 5% of the population with the childcare, would benefit 95% of the students, we would have to make a decision based on that. We can't not hold back 95% of the students for the benefit of the 5. So that would be set, but if it's like too cumbersome at any one of these points, we could always back out. Say, no, it would be too much to implement. But I don't want to get all the way to like the end. You have to put it thousands and thousands out. No, exaggeration, of course. I was into it, so I think we should design something if we are going to move forward with this with guardrails in place. Where if it's too much, we just table it until a better time. Mr. Chair, the superintendent has her hand up.
Can I go to Mr. Bennett first?
Let's see.
Oh, I'm gonna go Mr. Bennett first, and then I'll go to Dr. Levy David.
No, that's okay. I can wait. Let Dr. Camilla go first for me, please. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Levy David.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Jenkins, and y'all please excuse her. She was in this office conducting interviews with me very, very judiciously, and I took up a little bit of her time, so that's why she was running late. But for the piece concerning the late entry for high schoolers, one of the pieces that I would suggest before we even go any further in any discussions is to look at other school districts around the country that have actually implemented this piece, what the implications have been for them, what lessons they have learned from this process, what challenges they encountered, and what resources they needed to make it work efficiently. I know that one of the big issues at a couple of my other school districts was transportation and making sure that we could make those schedules work. Because as you know, transportation runs pretty much our greater master schedule. But I would love to be able to have the opportunity to explore other school districts that are doing this and doing this well, and to see if that's actually an alternative for our students, because I do believe that the later start times would be very beneficial, not only to their learning and to their ability to rest, but also with performance. Additional sleep and the ability to go to school later would definitely, as the research shows, impact a wide range of things for students of this 21st century generation. And I would like to be able to explore that piece with a group before bringing it to a greater committee and exploring that as a district. I think that would be a great piece for us to explore moving forward as we're looking at innovative ways to retain our students and to attract more students to Bridgeport.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Dr. Jenkins, I will be honest, and I understand, and thank you for the presentation. They look nice for everyone, but I'll be honest, because when I'm listening and reading in looking at your presentation, they talk about early, students go early in school, sleep very well, all that, la. Let's be honest. We got kids sometimes they cannot be early in the school because transportation, because they have to wait for the parents come. Sometimes they don't go to sleep very well because a lot of situations happening here in Brisbane. Let's be honest. Some family they're homeless. People leave something in shelter, and shelter have a policy. 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, you have to be in the street. That's the way the policy they go about the shelters. We have to know if that child sleep very well. But sometimes you see the child come to the school, but we don't know if that child sleep very well. Why the reason come late? What's going on in the family? Us as the board members and the staff, we have to be sure our child sleep very well and eat very well. So my question for you, Dr. Jenkins, do we have a survey or something like that they see? I can say the school, like nurses, social work, teachers, they know something's wrong with that child. That child sleep very well or they eat very well, because we can see. We're human. We parents. We got kids. If our kids don't sleep very well, or they come home with something stressed, depressed, or something, we know as a parent. So us as a professional, and you have a staff in the school, so you have something they connect to you, or the other teachers and the secretary director, they report you. Listen, we have this situation with the students not sleeping very well, they're not eating nothing well, because it's very nice you do a presentation, but let's be real, be honest. This is what happened. We have a family there, maybe lost a job, lives with somebody else. They don't eat very well. Shelter, something like I said, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, you have to go on the street. You have to do whatever you have to do. Shelter is for only for sleep and, get a shower, and that's it. So this is what I'm worried more about what's going on, because you can make that numbers, you can make that presentation, but I want the update, I want the fact. What Bridgeport School is doing to help our students when they don't have no sleep, no eat well, or the family. That we have a survey, do you have something, the staff, they tell you, listen, we had this situation with this child, do what we can help. That's my question for you, Dr. Jenkins.
Well, Mr. Benahan, I'm more aware of how we support food insufficiency. Several of our schools have backpack programs for children that they have suspected from their individual case study data. And we send food home in backpacks. I would need to take a moment to gather the data to let you know how many schools are engaged in that home backpack program. I believe that backpack program has been going on for almost 2 decades. So I know in regards to food insufficiency, there are some systems in place and partnerships in place to provide families with food. In regards to sleep, in which students may demonstrate not having sufficient sleep amounts, I believe that would be more of a question by question basis, and asking the school's leaders and their, I would call them their SRBI teams, when they come across students that may be fatigued in class, and how they collaborate with families to minimize the likelihood of a child being fatigued. I do know that is a marker that they attend to, basic physical well-being, sleep, making sure they're alert in class. So if you want actual numbers, I would need to get a survey out to the schools. But I do know a program does exist in which we support families with food insufficiency.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Also, we got PAC leaders and PTSO leading in each school. Then I know they help the parents. I can give I can get to you like Cesar Batalla. They have a food bank. They know the family. They know what's going on. They give it research. They give it information where they can go, where they can get food, stuff like that. It will be good that the principal contact all the PAC leaders from the school, PAC and PTSO, and because I got connection with the parents, and maybe they can help with get information, give the information to the principal, let them know, listen, this family needs some help, they need some information, they need some food, they need shelter, they need housing. It's time to step in and help our parents and our students. Presentation is very nice, and thank you, awesome. But we need to go to reality to help all these families and parents, because I don't want people say, oh, they always do presentation, but what's the fact? Why they don't help other parents? Why they don't help our students? Why they don't help our community? And it's time to step in, and go help our parents. No more question, no more comment, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for everything.
Mr. Traver?
Yeah, I think this is the perfect opportunity for us to explore this option. I hear what Dr. Levy-David is saying about looking at what's succeeding in other places within the state, because it sounded like there may be some districts in the state that have actually implemented it, but certainly around the country too, as Dr. Levy-David suggested. Mr. Benahan, I hear exactly what you're saying. We'll be starting at our next general meeting to have our student representatives on the committee. So to begin to explore with them the ramifications for the students. I remember when my daughter was going to school at Central Magnet, she would leave the house before we got out half the time. Because the buses took so long to collect all the students going to Central Magnet. So I think that it's worth exploring. Obviously, I see in the report that you presented about your past discussions, you were exploring it in the spring of that year. Well, now we're in the fall of this year. So we have a whole year to bring together the different pieces, the families you're talking about, Mr. Benahan, the students that we want to talk to, the look at other districts and what they've done that Dr. Levy-David is referring to, the staff that we want to talk to in the bargaining units. We can do all of that over the course of this year. And hopefully by the end of this academic year, next spring, be in a position to decide, is this something we want to look at for the following academic year? So I think that this is a great opportunity for us. Clearly, the authorities on child health have said this would be a great thing to do for a lot of good reasons. The health of the child, the academic performance of the child, et cetera. And then we want to look at the other factors that have been raised by Mr. Benahan and others with regard to their families and the situations that our children are dealing with. So I think it's great to try and figure out what's the best way for us to bring together some sort of working group to begin to explore whether this works for Bridgeport, whether this makes sense for Bridgeport. And so I would say that this committee, I don't know whether we want to consider making a recommendation for the full board to create a working group. I'm not sure quite what the best way. I would defer to more experienced members of the board, Ms. Baptiste Perez and Mr. Benahan and Mr. Sakalovic, as to how we would want to proceed, whether this committee wants to take some step tonight or whether it gets just presented to the full board at our next meeting out of this committee to begin to form some sort of working group to explore that. But it sounds to me like it's worth exploring and purely exploring because it's got a lot of pluses, but there are certainly a lot of serious factors that we need to look at before we bless it or go forward with it.
Yeah, and I just remembered when Dr. Levy was speaking, one of our first third rails would be the transportation piece. Because, I mean, even before the exploration of other districts and what they're doing, that would not be, that it would be fruitful if we do that first and then transportation cannot do it. So I think the first thing we need to do is see if our kids can get to the schools to get there first. It doesn't make sense to do all the other work if we can't even get them there. Does that make sense?
One of the problems.
Dr. Levy David, and also Mr. Benahan.
So just wanted to make sure that I could address the piece about transportation, because it is a really serious piece in the district right now. We continue to operate with a shortage of drivers. And currently our transportation department, instead of making 2 trips to a certain route, they're doing 3 trips to the same route. And I can tell you that for me, I'm an eternal optimist, but the shortage of drivers is completely aligned with salaries. The jobs are there. They've been posted. They remain vacant because we're not competitive in what we're paying drivers. And so that is going to continue to be an issue for our transportation department until we are able to have a serious conversation about compensation for that particular service that we provide to our students that they definitely deserve and should be entitled to have so that they can get back and forth to school when they live beyond a certain distance. But the one thing that I know would probably be helpful with exploring start times, not just for secondary, but all around, is that it would help to decrease the pressure on our transportation department with the continued vacancies that we have at this moment. So I just wanted to put that out there and to share it for further consideration with this piece.
Mr. Benahan.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Thank you, Mr. Schreiber. I really appreciate your work, but as always, I say for the record, when we respect each other and we communicate each other as the way it is, together we can make the difference. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I guess I have a question to one of the more veteran members of the board. Would this committee need to take action, or does the full board just take action?
This committee cannot take action tonight. It would be in violation of FOIA. If anything, it could be suggested during the full board report or an internal conversation with the chair if we want to create a separate subcommittee to discuss it. And so we can't take any action tonight, but it can be discussed.
Can this committee make a recommendation? Yes.
I don't know if the committee's at a point to make a recommendation.
And that's that question I understand you.
Yeah, I know, this time. But, yeah, because it's not an action item this evening, and it's something that can be brought back
I understand that.
as well. I mean, we could
So
bring it
is
back
it-
again for further discussion at the next meeting, flesh it out, make it an action item, and recommend to the full board that we proceed or create a work group to further study it. But it would have to be an action item to move it to the full board to get that work.
And in my question, I understand that. I understand the difference between action and recommendation. And I'm asking whether or not it matters. Do we do that out of committee as an action item or as a recommendation, let the full board decide? I'm really only asking an opinion from both of you.
No, it sounds like you're trying to just find a way without having action to take action.
Never mind.
This was.
Never mind. No, I was asking an opinion. I don't need you to tell me what I was trying to do.
All right, thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions for this at the time or comments, then I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And
moved.
a second. I second, I guess. So all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any seconds?
Ridiculous. It's
Have a good night, everyone. God bless you all.
Okay.